The story begins in a fortress, where a person sits alone in his room, deeply disappointed by something. He thinks that the people of their territory are going to starve again, but the Duke is not bothering to take any measures to prevent it at all. Suddenly, he looks out of the window, finding a massive ball of fire approaching the fortress, which leaves him shocked as he gazes at the widespread destruction in the city with countless soldiers killing civilians. After the attack, he realizes they are under attack by the Imperial Army. Remembering that this army is commanded by the Emperor Zerone, the person feels enraged at him while more and more balls of fire start to fall upon the fortress. Just then, he notices a warrior standing above the roof of the castle and recognizes him as their duke. Becoming shocked, he calls out to the duke. The person urges him to get away from there when a massive ball of fire strikes the roof, causing everything to get destroyed. Moments later, another fireball smashes the person's window, burning him to death and marking the fall of the worthless territory of the empire. Right after his death, the person wakes up as a young man, finding himself in a room. He's looking at his reflection in the mirror, becoming shocked, considering that he was supposed to die. He remembers this face belonging to the Duke when he was young, about 20 years ago. The person becomes surprised, realizing that he has regressed as Duke Aaron as a result of something completely unexpected happening to him. Aaron becomes shocked, locks himself up in a room, and stops eating and drinking while continuously cursing the Emperor for killing him. He keeps thinking about taking his revenge. After spending 3 days in a similar way, venting his frustration at those who led to his death, he finally makes the decision to use this second chance to the fullest. Shutting himself in a room, he starts to investigate everything about the Duke to live like him and prevent the coming fall. Shortly thereafter, a sudden famine strikes the territory, and Aaron, despite having all the luxuries, refuses to eat, crushing the bread with his hands, considering that his people are unable to even have a piece of bread. Aaron becomes frustrated, remembering that the real Aaron never paid attention to his people who were dying of hunger. Watching him crush the bread like that, Cheryl, his sister, becomes shocked and stops him from doing that, remarking that it is very precious, which she got after a lot of efforts. Seeing her, Aaron quickly puts the bread back, stating that he was doing it because he can digest it better in crushed form. Asking if she has time, Aaron suggests going somewhere out, making her confused. After some time, both of them go to visit the Knight Captain Rommel, who states that Aaron already ordered him to manage the food supply and asks why he called him with his armor on. In response, Aaron reveals that Emperor Zerone is going to kill them all, making both Rommel and Cheryl shocked, unable to believe it. Cheryl asks why he would do such a thing despite being their uncle and considering the promise he made with their late father. In response, Aaron states that it is not strange for the promise to be broken until they have the right to the throne and reveals that Zerone is taking part in underground work to break the promise. Mentioning the dragon's blessing, Aaron states that it is time to use that, causing Cheryl to ask if they were not supposed to hide it till the end. In response, Aaron states that dying at the hands of the Emperor is not included in the end he talked about and suggests that they should begin thinking that the words of her brother must have a reason behind them. Cheryl activates a magic spell, causing a portal to appear in front of them. While she is walking towards the portal, Rommel calls her out, expressing his surprise at her ability to use magic. Turning around, she smiles, remarking that she might not have told him about her ability. Crossing the portal, all three of them enter a frozen land and reach the end of a cliff, stating that it might not work since she has not tried it for a long time. She causes a huge ball of fire to form above them, casting similar spells simultaneously. She causes a huge wheel of inferno to form, leaving Rommel shocked. Using that, she strikes a mountain far away from them, causing its tip to get separated, which intensifies Rommel's astonishment. Cheryl, who seems unmoved by her spell, remarks that it was barely over the 7th circle, causing Rommel to express his astonishment at her high-tier magician abilities, acknowledging that Cheryl is indeed a high-ranking magician. She states that it's still not enough to face the entire Imperial army. Eren agrees, noting that she needs to become more powerful, while feeling astonished since, according to the Duke's diary, she was only a 5th circle mid-ranked magician, not an archmage. Meanwhile, Cheryl mentions that her skills are nothing compared to her brother's, prompting Rommel to turn to Eren and ask if that's true. In response, Eren suggests that they should give it a try and draws his sword. Feeling a little nervous, he remembers that the previous day he was reading the diary of the Duke and came to know that he is a Grandmaster-ranked swordsman. Wondering if he really had such great power, Eren got up from the chair and walked towards the book rack. Considering that no one was powerful from the start, he took out a book on basic Imperial swordsmanship and started to learn the techniques from it. Remembering that Eren raises his sword in the air, charging it with overwhelming energy, and uses the technique of piercing wind, launching a powerful slash. As a result of such a powerful move, the mountain gets divided into two, followed by its complete destruction. Considering that despite not going directly for that mountain, his attempt was successful, Eren stands confidently, while Rommel is taken aback by his power. The next day, a dragon flies above the territory, and when it suddenly senses the blessing it granted a human several millennia ago, taking a flip in the air, the dragon rushes toward the territory, transforming into a bird, and then lands on the ground, assuming a human form. Looking at the capital in front of him, the dragon wonders if he should go and see the humans who receive his blessings. A few days ago, when Eren regressed as the Duke, he read the diary of the Duke and learned that Zerone, with the help of the feudal lord, pressurized his father and usurped the throne. Soon after their father died, he and Cheryl had to leave the kingdom because they were chased away. The reason they were able to survive was because of the condition and oath that Zerone took with his father to protect them. In order to prevent them from coveting the throne for the rest of their lives, Zerone made Eren live as the Duke of the Brahn territory on the outskirts of the continent. This place was a small fortress built on barren land where even the crops could not grow, and was under continuous attack by the monsters. With the blessing of the dragon that both he and his sister had at the time of their birth, both of them had Grandmaster-level abilities. Despite having the powers to resolve all the problems in the territory, Eren decided to keep a low profile and hide his powers in order to keep the oath that his father had made. Reading all that, Eren closed the diary, wondering if a promise for the dead was more important than the lives of the living. Meanwhile, in the territory plaza, a child who was badly hurt while playing a game receives treatment from a saintess, causing his hand to become completely fine without even hurting. Stating that his parents must be worried, Cecilia, the saintess, states that he should not play dangerous games, and the child complies, causing her to compliment him for being a good child. Just then, she hears an announcement revealing the order of the Duke for everyone to gather at the plaza and becomes confused. Looking at Eren standing on a stone, people become confused, wondering why he is intending to make a speech while feeling frustrated. Considering that he never says anything useful. Meanwhile, one of them states that their Duke has gotten very strange these days and has hired all the knights who were jobless and is training them. Hearing their remarks, Eren thinks that it is natural for them to make such comments considering the personality of the original Duke and his negligence towards his duty. A few moments later, he starts speaking, revealing that orcs have increased and are targeting their territory, which has made it difficult for them to get food, but they cannot just leave it be. Hearing that, the people do not seem to be shocked, remarking that something has been happening for a long time. Observing their indifference, Eren asks if they are ready to sit still and become a target for those creatures or want to follow him in order to fight for survival. Hearing that, all of the people become shocked, considering it to be very strange for their Duke to show concern for them. Meanwhile, Eren goes on to declare that their territory is no longer protected, and from then on, they are going to be the invaders, while the people become perplexed. Eren explains that the orcs who pile up all the grain in their warehouses are even wealthier than humans, causing them to become shocked. Looking at their reaction, Eren realizes that they have finally taken the bait and smiles, encouraging them to plunder those monsters and become rich. In response, all of them get determined to defeat the orcs and become rich, supporting Eren in his decision. Standing among them, the dragon disguised as a human looks at Eren with surprise, wondering if he is the one who got the blessing, remarking him to be an individual with a lot of potential. The dragon summons a piece of paper in his hand. Sometime later, Eren is busy arguing with his treasurer in the castle as the argument grows more heated. Someone knocks at the door of the room, causing them to turn around in frustration. Entering the room, Runnel states that a person with a letter of recommendation from Duke Rainan has come, making both of them surprised. Entering the room, the person, who turns out to be the dragon disguised in human form, introduces himself as Canis, stating that he has come there at the recommendation of Duke Rainan. Taking the letter from his hand, Eren remembers that Canis was the same person who stated that he was a strategist but left 1 year later, in his last life. Opening the letter, he begins to read, stating that it has been 3 years since he left for the Brahn territory. Considering the situation in his territory, the letter states that a competent strategist has been sent to him along with some funding with the hope that he will make good use of it. Reading the letter, Eren recalls that Duke Rainan was a very loyal servant of his father but then becomes surprised reading about the funding sent to him. Hearing about funding, the treasurer also becomes surprised, while Canis reveals it to be 50,000 gold. Considering it to be a very small amount, the treasurer becomes disappointed, stating that the Duke has become less generous after losing his power. However, Eren, who seems satisfied even with the little amount, states that this will help him with more armor and keeping the territory clean. Hearing that, the treasurer becomes confused. Meanwhile, Eren explains that it is better to invest the leftover money, and if they maintain cleanliness, people will not fall sick, which will indirectly contribute to the stability of their territory. Considering it to be a little unrealistic yet good logic, Canis becomes astonished, realizing that Eren cares a lot about his people along with hygiene. However, the treasurer becomes frustrated with his plans and walks out of the room, stating that he's not going to play any part in it. After he leaves, Eren turns to Canis, considering his arrival to be perfect timing. However, he remarks that despite him being sent by the Duke, he cannot put him in a position of great importance right away, and Canis agrees. Eren states that he would like to see his capability as a strategist in the Orc campaign, asking if he can do that despite feeling frustrated at a human testing his capability. Canis states that strategy is his specialty, telling him to leave it to him while sharing his wish to get along well. Eren decides to take a lot of benefit from him in the next 3 years. On the other hand, Canis also finds him to be a very interesting individual. While he is thinking, Eren shares his intention of making dungeons after the war is over, asking what he thinks about it. This turns out to be something very strange, which makes Canis shocked. 1 week later, Eren stands on the ground in front of numerous knights and states that they are already aware of the strategy, asking if anyone needs more explanation. In response, everyone stands silent, observing which Eren takes it as they have understood everything and orders them to depart right away. He declares that this day is going to be the day when they will destroy the orcs. In response, the entire army raises their weapons in determination, and the palace gates are open, with Eren leading the army and departing for the mission. Standing in front of the Black Forest within his territory, Eren remembers an orc that took away his castle and made it his hiding place. He remembers that because those creatures cut off all their food supply lines, their territory started to suffer from starvation. After a few years, clenching his fist, he vows to get rid of the root of all these problems. Beforehand, while he is thinking, Rommel comes to him and states that they have found a group of kobold skirmishers, causing Eren to ask how many were there. In response, he reveals that there were 5 groups, each comprising 6 members. Hearing that, Eren calls out to Cheryl, and she looks out of the camp. Finding Eren giving her a signal, which she understands, she states that she will be coming out. Taking her magic staff, she comes out of the camp and summons a fireball, launching it towards the forest. In the forest, the groups of kobold skirmishers who are moving around get struck by these explosions and die. Realizing that the explosions were much greater, Eren becomes anxious and turns to Cheryl, forbidding her from using such powerful attacks that would gather the attention of the Emperor. However, in response, she starts to tease him, causing him to think that he should not have brought her with him if he knew her intentions. Looking at his expression, Canis remarks that the truth has to come out sooner or later, and he cannot tell his troops to keep quiet just for fear of getting noticed. Understanding that, Eren turns to Canis, asking if he found the location, and he agrees. One day before their dispatch, Canis explained to him the strategy of bringing out all the monsters to a favorable location and then fighting them there. Hearing that, Eren became a little confused, while Canis explained that it would decrease the number of casualties for them. Cus revealed that the Orcs tribe had 2,000 members and they only had 500, which would still lead to a great number of casualties no matter what. While everyone sat quietly, Canis went on to state that since they were going to be on the offensive, they needed to be more careful regarding the area they would be fighting. Canis explained that they would need 100 cavalrymen to lure the Orcs, which surprised Eren, and he asked if they would be using the cavalrymen as bait. However, Canis explained that their soldiers would be mobile, making it difficult for the monsters to catch them. On their way, the monsters would also be targeted by the other soldiers. He further stated that they would be luring the rest of them to the bottom of the hill and would surround them through shield men, forcing them to surrender. After hearing the entire plan quietly, Eren decided to go with it, finding it to be an impressive one. As a result of the massive explosion in the forest, the Orcs come out of their tribe, finding the countless dead bodies of kobold skirmishers. Picking those dead bodies up, they begin to walk inside again. Realizing that the monsters are on the move, Canis states that these are not normal Orcs and are likely to prepare for battle as soon as they realize that anything is wrong. In that case, he suggests Eren capture them and use them as slaves. Hearing that, Eren turns around with surprise while Canis explains that it is going to be beneficial for the dungeon development, which he mentioned earlier. Hearing that, Eren remarks that it is a good idea but wonders if they are going to follow the orders of a human like him, considering that such creatures only follow the orders from dragons. In response, Canis states that Orcs are the type of creatures that follow the orders of anyone with overwhelming power and he does not need to be a dragon for that, stating that he will think about it later. Eren remarks that he does not want extra casualties to occur just because of his greed. To begin with their plan, Eren calls out to Cheryl, telling her to move to the woods with her troops, while Rommel is instructed to create a formation with the shield men behind the hill. He then turns to Canis, telling him to stay at the top of the hill and wait, and he complies. Pulling out his sword, he then commands the remaining troops and proceeds forward with him. Meanwhile, the leader of the Orcs sits feasting on meat, when another Orc comes to him, informing him of the arrival of humans. Hearing that, Kuruk, the Orc chief, becomes frustrated and asks where they are, and his subordinate reveals that they are in the Black Forest, remarking that the cowardly people hiding behind the castle walls have finally come out. Kuruk states that it is going to be the death of all of them. Going to the top of his castle, he tells the Orcs about the arrival of humans, commanding them to kill them all and raid the castle. He orders them to release the Minotaur, and they open the doors of the prison house, leading a gigantic Minotaur to emerge. Letting out a loud roar, the monster joins the army of Orcs, while Kuruk encourages them to kill the humans and commands them, leaving the castle with his army. Flying above the hill, Canis, having transformed into a small bird again, suddenly hears a voice and finds the entire orc army proceeding forward at great speed. Watching this, he captures the image in his magic ball, anticipating witnessing the power of humans during this war. Meanwhile, Eren also proceeds forward with his army and finds the orcs coming toward him, causing him to command his army to get into a charge formation. Raising his sword in the air, he commands his knights to charge, pressing forward at great speed. Both armies soon come face to face, leading to a dangerous clash between 100 soldiers and 2,000 orcs. Using his excellent swordsmanship, Eren leads his army and continues to kill the orcs, making a path for them to proceed forward. Realizing that there are still a large number of monsters in their surroundings, Eren thinks that they need to push a little more. Just then, a gigantic axe suddenly comes in his direction, causing him to lean backward and dodge it. Surprised, he looks at the massive Minotaur standing in front of him, roaring loudly, which causes him and all his soldiers to cover their ears, unable to bear the loud voice. However, considering that they cannot give up so easily, he turns back to his army, telling them not to stop and to keep moving forward, which confuses them. Leaving them, he starts to charge forward and raises his sword to kill the orcs coming towards him. However, he remembers Kaina's suggestion to use these creatures to fulfill his dungeon development motive. Considering that, he avoids killing the creatures and simply knocks them down. Looking at the orcs continuously coming at him, Eren realizes that his army has angered them enough. Having fulfilled his motive, he turns back to his army, stating that the monsters are too much and instructing them to retreat. They start running away, which confuses the orcs. Realizing that the humans are running away after initiating the battle, the orcs start shouting, stating that they need to catch them. Making its way through the orcs, the Minotaur comes forward and starts to follow them at great speed. Looking at the monster following them, the knights become anxious and call out to Eren, stating that it is about to catch up to them. In response, Eren states that he is going to deal with that monster, telling all of them to hurry up and run to the hill. With that, he turns on again and moves towards the monster, while all of his soldiers keep running towards the hill. As the Minotaur is about to launch an attack on him, he keeps proceeding forward, vowing not to lose a single one of his comrades. Charging forward at great speed, he launches a powerful attack on the Minotaur, causing it to crash to the ground and get defeated in an instant. After that, he turns around, finding all his soldiers looking at him in astonishment instead of following his command and running towards the hill. However, relieved that he won't have to carry the monster on his own, he calls out to one of the knights, instructing him to tie up the Minotaur and hide it in the forest. Confused to hear this, the knight asks if he's not going to kill it, and he agrees, stating that it might be useful to them later, to which the knight complies. While they are tying up the Minotaur, one of them points in a certain direction, revealing that the orcs are coming after them again. Standing at a distance, Kuruk, who is leading the orcs, vows to defeat the humans instead of allowing them to escape the forest. Just then, the sky suddenly lightens up, causing them to look up and find countless balls of fire above their heads, falling above them. These balls of fire lead to a massive explosion, killing many of them. Realizing that Cheryl is shooting them recklessly instead of leaving some of them for his dungeon project, Eren has no choice but to retreat and go away. Watching him, Kuruk becomes enraged and commands the remaining monsters to catch him, stating that he is going to avenge the creatures that died at the hands of those humans. Following the soldiers, he reaches the bottom of the hill, determined to catch them, when he suddenly collides with something and falls back, becoming confused. In front of them, he finds countless strong shields held by the knights, blocking their path, which shocks him. Appearing from behind the shields, Eren states that all the orcs have been surrounded. He presents them with a way to get out alive through a battle in the form of a battle between two leaders, with the losing one becoming the slave of the other. In response, Kuruk states that he cannot trust humans while feeling a little frightened from losing to them deep down. Meanwhile, Eren states that he is going to swear on his pride as a knight, telling him to do the same on his pride as an orc. However, Kuruk replies that humans do not have any pride in the first place, which enrages him. This causes him to forget the negotiation and call out to the soldiers holding shields. However, as the soldiers are about to crush all the orcs, Kuruk accepts the challenge, telling Eren to remember his promise after the battle. In response, Eren walks inside the circle of shields, when Kuruk starts rushing forward to launch an attack all of a sudden, while he keeps standing still with a smile on his face. Reaching Eren, Kuruk launches a powerful strike on him, causing clouds of dust to spread everywhere. However, as soon as the dust settles, he finds Eren standing beside him unscathed and becomes confused. Realizing that he has successfully dodged the attack, continuously dodging the attacks, Eren realizes that the blessing of the dragon is helping him. Considering that before his brain could react to the attack, his body started to move by itself. Frustrated by his act of dodging the attacks, Kuruk starts to curse him, causing him to become enraged. Piercing his sword into the ground, he states that it is time to teach him a lesson, intending to fight barehanded. Realizing his intention, Rommel becomes shocked, remarking that it is not wise for a swordsman to throw away his sword during a fight. Telling him not to worry, Eren states that he is just trying to teach this creature a lesson. Considering that he has thrown away his weapon, Kuruk also throws away his weapon, deciding to confront him barehanded. Looking at both of them standing face to face with each other, Rommel thinks that despite being strong, Eren is at a great disadvantage if he tries to fight without his sword. He knows that orcs are built to be several times stronger than a normal adult, and their nails are said to be as tough as steel, in front of which Eren is no match. Meanwhile, Eren looks at Kuruk coming towards him and intending to launch an attack, and finds his movements to be very slow, wondering if they are really that slow. Eren effortlessly evades the attack. Watching Kuruk intend to launch a punch, he wonders if he can take the punch. However, as soon as he launches the punch, Eren easily dodges it, getting a little hurt along the way. Exhausted by his failed attempts, Kuruk stands at a distance while Eren, realizing that he has successfully avoided taking much damage, becomes astonished. Standing at a distance, the knights think that their lord is getting overpowered in the battle and wonder what will happen to them if they become slaves. Declaring that he is definitely going to make all the humans his slaves, Kuruk becomes even more determined to win the battle, telling them to be quiet. Eren suddenly disappears from in front of him, making him confused. Appearing right above him, Eren states that the ones destined to become slaves are not them and launches a hit at his face. As a result of getting the powerful hit, Kuruk crashes to the ground at a distance. Getting up, he realizes that Eren was using stealth magic, remarking it to be cowardice. Just then, Eren appears right in front of him and gives him another powerful hit, causing him to go flying backward. Seeing him about to fall upon them, the soldiers quickly make the formation, joining their shields, causing him to strike the shields and go flying backward again. Catching up to him, Eren seizes him by the head and begins to swing him around, causing him to lose all his power and crash to the ground, imploring to be saved. In the very next moment, Eren raises both his hands in the air and strikes him with such force that he knocks him out, leading their orc subjugation mission to success. Sometime later, Kuruk regains consciousness, finding himself tied to a chair in his own castle, which is now under human control. Standing beside him, Eren gazes at the countless orcs standing in front of the castle, surrounded by soldiers, and declares that he won't kill them, he will make them slaves of the humans. As all these creatures stare at him in confusion, he explains that they will work to provide service to the people in his territory, receiving food and hunting facilities in return. However, seeing the orcs' expressionless faces and receiving no response, Eren grows frustrated and threatens to treat them as he did their leader if they don't reply. Frightened to hear that, All of them quickly comply. In response, Eren states that as punishment for wasting his time and to make them reflect on their actions, they will take all the food from their storage. Sometime later, he comes back to his territory with all the food and resources that the orcs possessed, causing his people to celebrate and praise him for his victory. Turning to Rommel, Eren instructs him to gather all the orcs and take them inside the portal created by Cheryl, bringing them to a snowy region. He wields his great sword and slices through the mountains, causing the creatures to tremble in fear at his immense power. After displaying his power, he tells them to kneel before the power of a dragon, leading them all to bow down, instructing them to raise their heads. Eren tells them to remember what happened with the mountain as well as their place in the world. The next day, Kuruk returns to his castle and reveals that the other members of his tribe, having not witnessed his power, are preparing to seek revenge. Eren warns him that even if a single orc rebels against them, he will eradicate their entire species. Complying, Kuruk runs away, followed by his other subordinates. When Canis enters, remarking that he has really made these creatures his slaves, calling it impressive, Eren explains that they seem to recognize him as a dragon, making it easier for him to control them. Hearing that, Canis gives a smile, but then warns him that dragons never forget the people who impersonate them, asking if he knows that. However, Eren explains that he did not even say anything about a dragon, and all of them seem to have a misunderstanding on their own, which is why he decided to go with the flow. In response, Canis starts to laugh, realizing that the creatures were only scared of his powers. Agreeing, Eren states that his powers are strong enough to be mistaken for those of a dragon, causing Canis to become confused. Telling him not to worry, Eren instructs him to go and share the news with others, stating that they will have a meeting about all of this within the next hour. Complying, Canis leaves, while Eren keeps standing on the roof, thinking that the real Eren had enough power to protect his people and wondering if his promise to the king was that important. However, considering that he is not Eren, he decides to avoid using the ways of the nobles that only look promising, but rather those of a butler in order to protect the people of his territory. Remembering Zerone, the cruel emperor, he decides to prepare for the upcoming fight that is going to decide their destiny. After some time, the meeting between all the high-ranking officials of the territory, Eren states that they have been successful in taking care of the orcs, only because of Canis. Hearing that, Cheryl becomes sad and disappointed, considering that despite making a lot of efforts, she was not given even a little credit. However, Canis acts humbly in response, stating that it was only because of Eren that they were able to persuade the orcs. Becoming frustrated at not being given any credit, Cheryl speaks up, reminding them that she was actually the one who was launching fireballs from the back. However, instead of acknowledging her effort, Eren states that he did not even tell her to shoot the fireball, blaming her for killing some of their new labor force unnecessarily. This remark intensifies her frustration, causing her to tease him. In response, ignoring her, Eren comes to the main agenda, stating that now that their usable land has increased up to 5 times, they have to think about how to utilize that land. As soon as he reveals his idea of dungeon development on those lands, all of the people present in the meeting become shocked. Max, the administrator of the territory, asks if he's planning to use those dungeons as tourist attractions. In response, Eren turns to Canis, asking if he has the draft ready, to which he agrees, stating that despite being busy, he managed to complete the final draft. Canis places the blueprint for the dungeon development project on the table. Looking at such a detailed document prepared by him, all of the members of the meeting become astonished. Going through the entire document, Eren starts to clap, appreciating Canis for his effort but states that the profit model is missing by 2%. Confused, Canis asks him to explain what is missing. In response, Eren reveals that the viciousness required to trap adventurers that visit the dungeons by throwing them into the pit of light and having them work as their slaves Is something missing? Shocked to hear that, one of the officials argues that it is something that is going to destroy his reputation as royalty. Not caring about his reputation, he states that his only concern is going to be his comfortable life full of all the luxuries that he, as a duke and as a human, deserves. Hearing that, Canis begins to laugh, stating that Aaron is the type of person who always transcends common logic, and he assures him that he will be adding his method to the plan. Hearing that, the treasurer turns down in disappointment, considering it to be madness, and realizing that their territory is going to fall if it continues. The next day Aaron gets out of the castle and takes a round of the territory. After observing the condition for some time, he turns to the treasurer, asking if he is really running the sanitation project. Agreeing, the treasurer states that he is putting in all of his effort and is using up their winter food budget to proceed with the project, with the trust that Aaron will surely bring them food. Hearing that, Aaron reveals that he is not going to do anything like that, and they should have at least a little leftover budget. Asking what he means by leftover budget, the treasurer states that they have already spent a lot on buying armor for the orc raid. However, looking at his surroundings, the person states that their territory has already become much cleaner, and they will not need to spend more money on maintaining hygiene. Enraged to hear that, Aaron asserts that they need to keep their environment clean in order to avoid diseases spreading, telling him to never stop the process. Disappointed to hear that, the treasurer remarks that they are all going to die at this rate of spending. While being aware of the possibility of failing to keep up the sanitation as well as arrange food in the future, Aaron wonders if there is a solution to this problem. While he is wondering, a soldier comes to Rommel, informing him of a priest illegally performing surgery again. Hearing that, Aaron quickly turns around with surprise. Looking at a huge crowd of people gathered at a distance, walking towards the crowd, Rommel tells him that the Vivian Order priest must be healing people again. Hearing about the Vivian Orders, Aaron remembers that it is the religion that gets overshadowed by the Paris Order and disappears in a few years. However, hearing about healing, he suddenly gets an idea. Meanwhile, a soldier goes near the crowd of people and declares that a person from an authorized religion healing people on this land is strictly forbidden. Hearing that, the people turn around and start to leave the place quietly. Sitting in the middle of the crowd, the priest, who turns out to be Cecilia, apologizes, saying that she was not aware of it, and starts to walk away. Calling out to her, the father of the child she was healing states that his child is going to die if she leaves like this, while other people also start protesting against this rule. Going near the soldier, the person starts to express his anger, asking if they are going to take responsibility if his son dies. Trying to calm them down, Cecilia states that they are going to return some other day, and it is best for all the people to go back. However, just then, Aaron calls her out, telling her to stop, causing her to turn around in confusion. Walking towards them, he states that they can continue healing, making them surprised. Remarking them to be good people helping his citizens, Aaron states that he does not have any reason to kick them out, and they can continue what they have been doing. Hearing that, all of the people start to celebrate, while Cecilia expresses her gratitude for such a decision, stating that the rest of the priests can continue with the treatment. Aaron instructs Cecilia to follow him, and she complies, considering that their affiliation to a different religion does not matter to him until they are providing treatment for free. Aaron decides to make them continue healing like this. Sometime later, in the conference room, Cecilia expresses her excitement by embracing him, making him shocked to see her doing something saints should not do. With her face beaming with happiness, Cecilia asks him if he was serious about his decision to build a temple on his land. In response, Aaron states that there is no reason for him to not do that, causing the treasurer to become frustrated. Losing his patience, he states that he cannot allow it since they have no remaining budget, and if there is a temple at the moment, they will have no emergency funds left over. Replying that he is aware of that, Eren states that they also have some additional funds hidden, telling him to use that. Frustrated to hear that, the treasurer states that this was the money the previous emperor left for them to use in difficult situations. However, Eren simply replies that the situation is also dire, leaving no choice for him but to comply. Hearing all that, Cecilia begins to express her gratitude to him, but he interrupts her, telling her to think about thanking him after hearing his complete condition. Hearing that, she becomes a little confused, while Eren gives a smile, revealing that he has a condition for building a temple in his land. Eren states that he has a condition for building the temple and reveals it to be the condition of holy water production. He mentions having heard about the possibility of creating holy water at the temple and asks Cecilia to promise to produce it and help develop the territory. Cecilia quickly agrees to the request, promising to produce the holy water. Eren specifies that she will have to produce it free of charge and in any quantity he desires, to which she also agrees. A few weeks later, Canis rushes to Eren with news that the orcs have seemingly discovered a hidden dungeon near the fortress they inhabit. Hearing that, Eren asks what kind of dungeon it is, and Canis reveals that Kuruk has described it as a useless abandoned dungeon. Surprised by this information, Eren inquires whether the dungeon does not appear in ancient documents or if the owner's name is not listed anywhere in the agreement. Canis mentions that they couldn't find any reference to it and that after its owner disappeared, it has become a den for various monsters. Eren asks if Canis plans to develop the place, to which Canis responds that he doesn't see any way to bring in adventurers no matter how he looks at it, revealing his idea to be related to the elixir of eternal life. Eren states that they will spread a rumor that a cure-all portion exists in that dungeon, asking if he is curious. Eren tells him to follow him and takes him to the temple where different priests are busy healing the people. Looking at Cecilia, Canis becomes surprised, sensing the strong divine power surrounding her body and wonders if such a thing could occur in this kind of place. Meanwhile, Cecilia turns around, finds them standing behind her, and quickly gets up and runs towards them, feeling the intensity of the light emanating from her body getting stronger as she comes near. Canis looks at everyone acting normal and wonders if they are unable to see that power. Meanwhile, Eren gets away from Cecilia's way, causing her to crash to the ground and quickly get up, feeling a little embarrassed. Feeling a little awkward himself, Eren asks about how the construction is going and if there are any problems. In response, Cecilia states that they are about halfway done, causing him to ask if she can create the holy water. In that case, agreeing, she turns to the statue of the divine and starts praying, causing the water placed in front of the statue to start shining brightly. Observing this, Canis is astonished, realizing that this kind of divine power couldn't belong to a human and wonders about Cecilia's true identity. Meanwhile, Eren takes a small amount of the water and gives it to the treasurer, suggesting that it will have the best effect on him due to his old age and sensitivity. Taking the water from him, the treasurer states that a person can never be sustained by just drinking water unless it's the Empire's finest healing potion. However, as soon as he takes a sip, he starts feeling greatly refreshed and becomes as energetic as a young man, commenting that he feels 5 years younger than his age. The old man remarks that it seems to be precisely like the healing potion. Astounded by its impact, Eren turns to Cecilia, who stands holding his arm and becomes startled, quickly moving away. Considering the effectiveness of the holy water to be extraordinary, Eren realizes how significant Cecilia is for their goals. He calls out to Canis, who steps forward to listen. Approaching him, Eren asks if there will be no problems if they use this water to spread rumors about the elixir of eternal life. In response, Canis states that there isn't a single place on the entire continent where holy water is as effective as this, and it should suffice to fulfill their purpose with the supply settled. Eren states that they should now prepare to conquer the dungeon, remarking that it is completely all right. Cecilia states that she wants to introduce him to someone, making him confused about who he is. Cecilia reveals it to be the Holy Knight Captain of the Vivian Order, causing Eren to express his surprise and ask if the Vivian Order also has warriors. She explains that unlike other warriors, the knights belonging to the Holy Order specialize in defense. They cloak their bodies and divine power and emasculate their opponent's attacks with their defense power, which is considered to be equivalent to an entire castle. However, she feels a little sad, stating that the captain is the only one remaining in the entire order. Eren comes closer and asks if that's why they decided to come to this territory. Just then, someone calls out to him from behind, prompting him to turn around and see a woman dressed as a knight, stating that a person like him cannot approach the saintess. Confused by this remark, Eren gazes at her silently, while she mentions that she came to the territory because she heard a temple was to be built, but in reality, it's a very weak territory. She considers the territory to be in a very hopeless condition, prompting Cecilia to interrupt, addressing her as Lady Bianca and stating that she cannot behave this way towards the Lord. Meanwhile, Eren shares his confusion about her calling it a weak territory, to which Bianca responds that unlike Cecilia, she will only show loyalty to those who are strong. Eren asks if she has ever sworn loyalty to anyone in that case, to which she replies that no one has ever been strong enough for that. Responding with a smirk, Eren asks if she would like to make a bet, which leaves her confused. Eren states that the person who lands 3 good hits during their fight will be considered the winner, and if she loses, she will have to swear her allegiance to him. Hearing this, Bianca also smirks, considering him a very arrogant individual, while Eren responds with a smile. Sometime later, both Eren and Bianca stand face to face with each other, ready to fight the battle, stating that there is no point in watching the battle, the results of which are obvious. One of the knights gives a sigh. Meanwhile, another one states that without even using his sword, their lord utilized the sleep destruction magic in order to defeat the war, which proves how powerful he is. Considering that there is a possibility for Bianca to get severely injured, stating that there is nothing else they can do, one of them suggests calling the Castle Knight Order captain. Meanwhile, Eren picks a twig from the ground, causing Bianca to get enraged, remarking that it was very arrogant to go against her with a mere twig. In response, Eren states that even the twig will be sad upon hearing those words from her, causing her anger to intensify. Putting her shield in front of her, she starts to pray to the divine to bestow upon her the power to defeat her enemy. A few moments later, an overwhelming energy starts coursing through her veins while Eren, who seems bored after watching her, asks why she is taking so long to prepare for the attack, telling him to stop teasing her. Bianca proceeds forward at a great speed while Eren raises the twig in the air, charging it with overwhelming energy, bringing it forward. He then launches an attack with it, causing the overwhelming powers to strike with Bianca's shield, leading her to crash to the ground, teasing her again. Eren states that she cannot look down on the twig if she is going to faint just after a single attack. With that, he touches the shield with the twig again, causing it to start cracking and then shatter apart, leaving Bianca shocked, realizing how incredibly powerful he is. Bianca kneels down in front of him, while Eren repeats the condition of winning, to launch 3 strikes on the opponent. Bringing his twig forward, he launches the first hit, causing her to crash to the ground, while all the soldiers cover their eyes, unable to see such cruelty. Meanwhile, Eren launches the second hit, causing her to experience intense pain, yet she has no choice but to bear it. Launching the third and final hit, Eren causes her to crash to the ground, stating that he has met the condition for launching 3 hits. Eren warns her to never insult him or his territory again. However, instead of feeling embarrassed, Bianca gets up and turns to him with a smile, stating that he is the first person to have defeated her. While she is about to say something further, Cecilia covers her mouth, causing Eren to become confused. Apologizing for her behavior, Cecilia states that she must be confused after the battle, while feeling a little awkward. Eren states that it is all right and turns to Rommel, instructing him to gather those who went for the dungeon subjugation. After some time, the troops gather in front of him, along with Cheryl, Canis, and Rommel himself, remarking that there are only 100 soldiers who can be mobilized, excluding those on territory. Defense, Eren remarks it to be very little, stating that the population of their territory is around 5,000. Canis explains that their protection can only be possible if they mobilize only 1/10 of the soldiers, agreeing to it. Eren states that they need to attract more population, for which they will need to develop their territory further, and Canis assures him that he will formulate a strategy to do so. Just then, Eren suddenly remembers that in his past life, around this time, because of what happened earlier, Count Grey and Count Amen's territory had a large number of migrants watching him. Engrossed in his thoughts, Canis calls out to him, causing him to realize that he had to address the soldiers. Turning to the soldiers, he states that they are going on the mission of dungeon subjugation, in which they will be capturing the place and digging up the treasures. Raising their weapons up in determination, all of them then begin to move towards the dungeon. As he reaches near the dungeon, Kuruk, who is waiting for him at the entrance, kneels down, paying his respect. Surprised to see him, Eren dismounts the horse, asking if everything is all right, to which Kuruk, who seems a little worried, replies that there is something wrong, making him confused. Entering the dungeon, Kuruk leads them to a place where a lot of orcs are lying dead on the ground, while Kuruk reveals that they started to act weird all of a sudden. Calling out to them, Cheryl, who seems to be feeling cold, asks if everyone is feeling this way or if it is just her. Just then, the orcs that were lying dead on the ground suddenly begin to rise with a fierce killing intent in their eyes, making them confused. Watching Eren and his fellows in front of them, the orcs raise their weapons and start to rush towards them to attack. Seeing that, Kuruk becomes shocked, considering that Eren will annihilate their race if they do that. In order to stop them, he proceeds forward and raises his weapon in the air, hitting one of them who falls upon the rest of the monsters, leading them all to crash to the ground. However, as soon as they crash to the ground, a spirit suddenly appears, causing Canis to become shocked and reveal that they are ghosts. Just then, the ghost starts to rush towards Kuruk, who tries to hit it just like the orcs. However, instead of falling back, it passes through Kuruk's weapon and proceeds forward towards Eren at a great speed. Watching that, Eren pulls out his sword and blocks the ghost with it, causing it to disappear. However, as soon as it disappears, a lot of similar ghosts start to appear around them, making them shocked. Watching the countless ghosts loom on them, Cheryl becomes frustrated and summons a fireball with her staff. Watching that, the ghosts suddenly become startled, and instead of running away, they start to rush towards Cheryl. However, before they can reach near, Eren comes forward and slashes them with his sword, while Cheryl uses his magic of fire spray simultaneously. As a result, the fireball that she summoned begins to spew fire, which burns all the spirits, causing them to disappear. Just then, Rommel calls out to Eren and Cheryl, and they turn around in confusion, finding him and Kuruk fighting with the ghosts. Rommel remarks that these creatures are impossible to cut, stating that he forgot to mention something. Canis reveals that since they are spirits, only magic can work against them. Hearing that, Rommel becomes frustrated, asking why he did not tell them this earlier. Meanwhile, Cheryl brings her staff forward, telling everyone to stand still and causes numerous balls of fire to emerge from it and strike the weapons of all their fellows. This causes their weapons to get imbued with magic powers, while the wooden weapon of Kuruk burns to ashes as a result of fire, making him shocked. Proceeding forward with their strong weapon, Rommel and Eren then start to deal with the ghosts, killing them one by one while spreading great destruction in the dungeon. Realizing that the humans have started to defeat them, the ghosts combine together, while letting out a huge scream, causing them to cover their ears. As a result of combining together, they transform into a gigantic creature that is much more powerful than the rest of them. Proceeding forward, the creature is about to launch an attack when Eren suddenly appears and launches a powerful slash, causing the creature to disappear instantly. Walking towards the book rack at a distance, Canis remarks that these creatures were not there to fight but were protecting something. Going through the books, Cheryl suddenly finds something and calls out to Eren, telling him to take a look. Confused, he turns to her and finds a book in her hand titled Legacy of the Ancients. She reveals that during the era of the Demon Empire, a group of people called monks were practicing something in this place. Reading further, she finds it to be a guide related to mental strength training and becomes astonished, while Eren becomes confused about its meaning. Cheryl explains that unlike magicians who normally use magic, these people introduced a completely different idea called mental strength. Hearing that, Eren shares his astonishment, remarking that this is the first time he has heard about anything like that. Considering that this technique was known a long time ago in his past life, Eren remembers that mental strength increases the capacity of storing mana inside the body even with growing age. Thinking that, he turns to Canis, asking if he has heard about anything like that before. In response, Canis explains that if it is like what Cheryl said, this means that even normal people can acquire magical abilities through mental strength training. Hearing that, Eren gets the idea of training all the troops and his territory to use magic using their mental strength. However, Canis argues that it would not be beneficial to release such important information, causing him to ask why. Pointing to the destruction spread everywhere, Canis states that the situation shows that it was either an orthodox method, or its side effects were too great, which resulted in this. Understanding what he means, Eren agrees to his suggestion and states that he is going to keep it to himself. Proceeding to the next floors of the dungeon, they keep exploring it, gaining valuable treasures. After completing the exploration, Eren turns to Kuruk, telling him to take half of whatever they found and leave the rest for everyone else. Calling out to him, Canis asks if it would be okay if he takes the gold. Confused, Eren asks what he plans to do with this gold. In response, Canis explains that this dungeon is built on an ordinary layout and that it is going to be difficult to give adventurers a sense of suspense. Eren agrees that is the reason why he states that he wants additional funds in order to add some more interesting features to the dungeon. After some time, the renovation process of the dungeon is initiated under the supervision of Canis. After setting up all the basics, Canis, who stands in the dungeon, activates the powers of a dragon and spreads his energy throughout the place. As a result, the bones scattered throughout the place join together to form gigantic skeletons with the spirits of all the ghosts rising in once again and spreading throughout the place. In order to add the final touches to it, he goes towards the holy water placed inside one of the compartments and adds something to it. After tasting it, he remarks that its taste is exquisite along with its impact on increasing the lifespan by 1 year. Giving a smirk, he states that the only thing left behind is to bring the customers driven mad by greed and starts to laugh loudly, his voice echoing throughout the entire dungeon. After some time, a group of adventurers arrive at the gates of the Brand territory, get their identities approved, and step inside. Remarking on the heavy rain, the person leading the group states that the winter does not seem to come to an end soon. Looking around, he remarks that the soldiers seem to have gotten new armor. In response, a woman in his group states that they might have discovered a relic in their newly made dungeon, which has become a new source of income for them. Hearing that, the person leading them points to something in front of him, asking if this is also the result of the money they received. Looking at an extravagant guest house in front of them, the person states that they have just started building new facilities. In response, the woman remarks that this shows how gladly they are welcoming adventurers like them, considering its reason to be the money they are going to spend in their territory. Stating that they will also play their part by spending as much as they can, the person moves towards the guest house. Opening the door, he enters inside, causing the owner of the guest house to recognize him as Gerald and welcome him. Going towards the owner, Gerald asks if he has recently made new money to have remodeled his entire building from the bottom up. In response, the owner reveals that it is all debt and explains that a new dungeon has recently been opened, suggesting that they take the opportunity and enter it before everyone else. Remarking him to be a very ambitious person, Gerald looks around to see if anyone is hearing and then gets closer to him, bribing him and asking if he knows anything about the dungeon. In response, the owner states that he himself has only heard about what lies inside the dungeon, but he is going to be the first one to enter it. Hearing that, Gerald gives him 1 gold coin and turns around, telling him to prepare some food and drinks for them. The next morning, Aaron sits in his room practicing the techniques of mental strength from the book he found. Considering that he cannot control the dragon's blessing inside his body at his will, Aaron really wants to have a technique that he can control on his own despite the dangers associated with it. While he is busy cultivating the energy, someone suddenly calls out to him, causing him to open his eyes and find Cecilia in front of him. Startled to see her in front of him all of a sudden, Aaron asks what she is doing. In response, Cecilia gives him a plate of sandwiches, stating that she brought them for him, making him surprised. Handing him the plate, she states that she will be leaving when another soldier comes to him, informing him about the arrival of adventurers and causing him to get excited. The next day, all those adventurers head towards the dungeon, which is named the Shrine of Aten. Coming near the gate of the dungeon, one of them reads the sign placed on the gate, learning that in order to enter the dungeon, they will have to pay 10 gold coins. Going to the gatekeepers, she pays them the amount and receives a document confirming their right to enter the place, along with instructions on keeping it safe until they leave. After letting her in, the gatekeepers block the entrance once again, telling the others that they cannot enter until they have this proof. In response, Gerald states that they have just bought the papers, but the soldiers reveal that the entry fee for the dungeon is 10 gold coins per person and not per group. Hearing that, all the adventurers become shocked, remarking it to be a scam. In response, the soldier states that he will convey their words to the Lord while revealing that the elixir of eternal life that lies in the dungeon can finish at any moment. Having no other choice, Gerald pays the fee for his entire group to enter. As soon as they enter the place, a person standing in front of him starts to sell the holy water, stating that they will need it to eliminate the undead creatures. In response, Gerald shows him a bottle in his hand, stating that he already has the holy water. Seeing that, the person asks if it is Paris Church's holy water, remarking that the one from the Vivian Church is the best in the entire place. Annoyed as well as convinced, Gerald pays him the required amount and buys the holy water, walking ahead. Proceeding a little further, they find another board displaying the fee for an emergency dispatch request to be 100 gold coins per person and wonder what kind of scam it is, explaining that this is not a scam but a device that the Lord himself created for the adventurers in danger. The seller states that it is not unfair to save one's life with just 100 gold coins. In response, Gerald asks what will happen if they do not make a request, to which the person explains that they will not be charged at all in that case. Considering that attaining the elixir will lead them to earn much more money than they are spending in this place, they enter the place, accepting all the conditions. Meanwhile, Aaron and Canis, who are watching them in the magic sphere, seem to enjoy it a lot. Calling out to Kuruk, Aaron states that the undead creatures might get a little boring because of the holy water and tells him to do something else. Meanwhile, on the second floor of the dungeon, the group of adventurers keeps diligently fighting against the undead monsters after consuming the holy water they bought. Gerald feels relieved, remarking that it would have been very tough for them if they did not have this elixir. Looking at the staircase leading to the third floor, they wonder if it is the last floor when they suddenly hear a sound and turn around, finding another ghost coming in their direction. Excited to see it, One of the adventurers remarks that it is very unoriginal and throws the bottle of holy water in its direction. However, instead of getting eliminated by the holy water, the ghost pushes the person, causing him to crash into the basement, leaving all others shocked. Remarking it to be a mutant ghost, Gerald tells all of them to prepare for the battle. However, just then, countless similar creatures start to appear one after the other, causing them to realize that they have no choice but to run away. Turning on, all of them start to descend from the stairs and reach the next floor while trembling with fear. After they leave, all the ghosts remove their masks and turn out to be Kuruk and his fellows, who start laughing at their reaction.